It's a great joy to have both the authoress, Lynn Clark, with us, and Kynwyn Swann. Kynwyn has some memories she's going to share with us of Mrs. Lloyd-Jones.
I assure you, I wasn't exactly a volunteer. I think I'm here to sort of be a link. We've got the link up there, and I'm here as a sort of a link. I think it could be a generation thing. I always think of you as very young. Here am I in the middle, and Mrs. Lloyd-Jones a distant but a very fond memory, isn't she? And perhaps I've been asked to just say one or two little things that might prove an interesting link. And I was aiming to be within 3 minutes, but I'm afraid I'm not very good at that. I can take it, well, first of all, I would say grace is a great leveller, isn't it? We've all come the same way, nothing in my hand I bring, simply to my cross I cling. So whatever gifts or whatever our background, it's a great comfort to know that grace is a great leveller. And I go back a long way to the early 50s and the very first Welsh Evangelical Movement of Wales conference. It all started in a very small way. So a group of men had been converted and they'd got a little magazine going, and Elwyn Davies was trying to combine his pastorate in Jerusalem, Blaenau Ffestiniog, with being the General Secretary of the Evangelical Movement. Then he eventually moved to Bala, and that's where the very first conference took place, all in Welsh. And that's where I first remember meeting Anne Lloyd-Jones. And I was very new to doctrine and things, and joining in the group, often out of my depth, sometimes cottoning on. And I can just remember distinctly the long chat we had about keeping the balance between being objective and subjective. And I still think I've got L plates on that one. So that was lovely. And there I met Mary. She was then Mary Wyn Davies, living in Pantanead, her home farm in Parc near Bala. And I went home with her. In those days, we didn't have a phone, we didn't have a car, there was no bus transport. I didn't cycle over the Berwyn Mountains, the things I had done. But somehow the Lord, in his wisdom, got me from where I was, having been a student in Aber in my first year, and got me to Bala. And in his wisdom, he prompted Mary to say, would you like to come home with me for a couple of days? Well, she was so much more mature in the faith. And with a mixture of making crab apple jelly, I remember singing Pennillion with a harp, and then being encouraged to read and pray. It was lovely. And then I was told that somebody called Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones, well, I'd heard a bit about him, he and his wife were having their annual break, or part of it, in Pantanead. And of course, when John and Mary got married and set up home in Llanymawddwy, and the minute I say that, you all say, yes, now I know what you're talking about, because Llanymawddwy brings such lovely memories to you all, doesn't it? Well, John and Mary then had Dr. and Mrs. Lloyd-Jones to stay there regularly. And I can only picture perhaps Bethan Lloyd-Jones and Mary alone chatting. Mary would have had months of being deprived of proper teaching. The church wasn't helpful in the village, and there they would be able to discuss and share, open the scriptures and pray. And I just think, well, I can only imagine the scene there. Well, then we had different conferences in different places, and some of you who are here will remember going from to Denby and places like that, and Carnarvon. And in those days there were so few of us to give a testimony and sing that you were made, you had no choice. You're singing in the open air, you've got to give a witness, and we all had to do it. So in Carnarvon especially, I remember it was a very blessed conference. The doctor was speaking, and then we were put in places like this, tables like we do for the lunch on a Friday once a month. We were about 8 to a table, fairly quiet, without the usual buzz and hum that we get. So you could have conversation, and he looked across at the table and he said, your plate is empty, where's the meat? Have they missed you? Don't you have meat? I don't eat meat. Why is that? Well, I don't like meat. So that went on, and then after a while he nudged his wife, and they were watching. We must have had the vegetables, and he said, well, you must fill up on cheese. You must eat a lot of cheese. Silence. I don't eat cheese. Well, then they had a discussion. He said, Bethan, listen to this, he was saying to her. And that was that, and they were interested. I drank lots of water and cycled everywhere, and that was it. How do you look so healthy, etc., which I did then. And then at the end of the conference, you know, that time, we would meet and we would always say, what did he mean when he said that? I don't know. And then we would say to each other, with perhaps 5 or 6, well, let's see if this chapel's open. And we'd go into a chapel and we would pray and look forward to the next. And you expected to be moved on. It was like windows opening. It was lovely. And we thought it was very normal. But looking back, it was quite special. However, I must tell you this little bit. Oh, you'll have to stop me. Do you know, at the end of the conference, they must have said goodbye to so many people, and people are well informed in doctrine, mature, and young ones like me. And he came, and he said, come here, my girl. And you came. And there were the two of them. We've got something to say to you. We've been thinking. We hope you're not sorry you've come. We hope you're glad you've come to the conference. And look here, I can see him going like that. Look here, we want to tell you, you stick to the diet in every sense. You know, there's a lot behind that, wasn't there? And then to try and be quick, I've been asked to remember a couple of things. They were in our home, and I think he must have gone for a rest. And there were just the two of us, and I was troubled then, and she drew me out, as a wiser lady would, about what was wrong with young wives. And I said, well, we've come from where we were, and we've seen people converted, and we've been enjoying this. But the girls, they've all moved on. We were at like a transit camp in our church. People came for their jobs, they went. And I said, at the moment, we've got people who've come in and said, look, you need to introduce this, you need to bring this and make it more attractive and interesting, and people will come. And I thought to myself, we've come from there about 18 years ago, but it's gone full circle. And I was concerned of probably getting tired. And then she looked, and oh, I remember her eyes. And those of you who know better will say, she had lovely eyes, but behind them I thought, compassion, tenderness, listening, thoughtfulness. And she said, I know what I would do, but I shall ask him. And you know what they did? There was I, a little one with a small group, and all the people he knew were worldwide, but they took time and patience, and then she came back to me and said what he said, to spiritual, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and so on. Right, I'll tell you one funny thing. There was one minister who came to visit them, and whereas Mrs. Lloyd-Jones we know over the years, and those of you who've known her longer than I am would know that she always dressed very presentably, but perhaps was not a leader in fashions, especially in older years. And this man, who was from a farming background like me, said to Derek and me, I do wish Mrs. Lloyd-Jones wouldn't keep on dressing like a farmer's wife. I found that rather strange and quite entertaining. And then I was thinking, she had probably read of modest apparel in 1 Timothy, and from Titus to be a good keeper at home. So that's a little glimpse and some of the lovely memories. You must remember, I'm older than most of you, and we tend to be selective, but some things come back to me very vividly. So I must close, but not before we say a huge thank you, as we would say in Welsh, diolch o galon, for coming. We think of Lynn fondly as Lynn, despite what they put on.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, that's right. Lynn, and you don't mind being referred to as Stephen's wife?
Oh, not at all.
That's right. And Stephen Clark, lots of us have heard Stephen preaching. Also, as well as being a wife and a pastor's wife and the busyness that comes with that, you've got 3 children, not 3 children.
Yeah.
And now you're a grandmother,
Yes.
with the privilege and dreadful responsibility that that brings. And I know you to have been such a kind, caring daughter and daughter-in-law, and given the parents much peace and health in their old age. So with great joy, I hand over to Lynn and say, we're thankful to you, not for finding the time, but for making the time. And for your diligence. Thank you.
Right, how did I, first of all, why it's Lynette J. Clark. I'm known as Lynn to everyone, and it would have been easier to have written Lynn Clark on the book, but my purpose wasn't to be known. It was that my mum and dad who died, they gave me that name when I was born, Lynette, and I thought I wanted to remember them by putting that on the book. How did it come to be? Well, it goes back at least 10 years ago, if not longer, that I was asked by our church, Free School Court in Bridgend, to speak at a Ladies' Day conference, and I was asked to speak on a godly woman. So my first thought, I think, was to go to the 17th or 18th century. And my husband said, what about Bethan Lloyd-Jones? And first of all, I thought, well, what about her? You know, I don't know anything about her, and who does know anything about her? But it really struck a chord with me. And so I started looking around and seeing if I could find any information. Fortunately, there was an old lady in Port Albert who'd been a child when the Lloyd-Joneses went to Port Albert. And she was still at home, and I was able to go down and interview her. So I had some very, very interesting things about Bethan Lloyd-Jones when I went to Port Albert. I gave the address in the church, and I can remember going home and saying to my husband, do you know, I would love to write a short booklet on Bethan Lloyd-Jones. It is such a gem. And shortly after that, my mother and father came to live with us. My father had Alzheimer's, so I was able to help my mother. But a very short time, really. They were there a very short time when we discovered my mother had a brain tumour, and she was just given 2 months to live. So I was left then looking after my dad for quite some time. And when he died, within that year, Stephen's mother, who was partially sighted, registered blind, she came to live with us. So it left me with really virtually no time. So I hadn't even thought about writing this book. And then I was approached by somebody from Bryn Tyrion Press saying that they understood that I had some information about Bethan Lloyd-Jones. I'd done some research. Could they have all the information? So dutifully, I got all the information and I got it up on the laptop, and I was just about to send it. And I suddenly thought, for some reason, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought, this is my book. This is my book. I was going to write this. And so I sent an email and said, are you commissioning me? Rather cheekily. And I was shocked because they said yes. So anyway, that was the beginnings then of really seriously thinking about writing the book. It was peppered with my mother-in-law coming through when I was in the middle of researching and different things. So it was a very sort of stop and start. I wasn't given a deadline, so that was good. I'd never have made it. And then I had to go to Aberystwyth, and then I spoke with a number of people. I spoke to Kynwyn on the phone, and Lynette I went to see, and many other friends of the Lloyd-Joneses. So you have all these little snippets. On the back of the book, if I can just borrow it, did you have a book?
Gosh, with me.
Somebody had a book, thank you. On the back of the book, there's some commendations, and one of them is by Kathleen Nielsen, and she writes, a godly woman who served her Saviour with wit and wisdom. And you'll find a lot of wit and wisdom in this book. I haven't really come to terms with the fact that it's actually my book with my name on. It doesn't really matter. Because my 3 prayers, I think. My first prayer is that God will be glorified. My second prayer is that the saints will be edified and blessed and encouraged. And thirdly, that sinners or those who are religious will come to know the Saviour. Perhaps not everyone knows that Bethan Lloyd-Jones was under Dr. Lloyd-Jones's preaching for 2 years before she was converted. And You know, there are many who've been in the church all their lives and think they're Christians and think that they're there. And they've just got the frosting, not the reality. So I'm praying with all my heart that God will use it so those who are just religious will truly find the real meaning of being a Christian. And I just before, there may be some questions, but before I do that, I just wanted to read her wit, just an example of her wit, and also of her wisdom. It says here, one minister recalls her comments on the danger of people flattering a minister. Remember, she said, that after the soft soap comes the close shave. And then with her wisdom, it says, there was one woman, now I had actually put in the book, there was a difficult woman, and I can remember having an interview, one of the interviews with Anne and with Elizabeth, and one of them said, oh, you can't put difficult, because I think she's still alive. And although I don't name her, I think that she would recognise who she is. And the other one said, oh yes, yes you can. She was always difficult for Mother, you know. So I did leave out difficult. There was one woman in the congregation who would not bend her head or her heart with respect to the question of a wife's submission to her own husband. On one occasion, she spoke with Mrs. Lloyd-Jones, believing herself to have the advantage. Are you telling me, she asked, that if your husband got you up in the early hours of the morning to post a letter for him, you would submissively obey him? With characteristic wisdom, Bethan replied, oh yes, but as soon as it was morning, I'd make sure I make an appointment for him to see the doctor. It's really full of things like that. She's just so wise in situations and with people. And I remember Elwyn Davis and his wife, when we were in our first pastorate, I can remember something they said to me that I have never ever forgotten. And I seek to do every single day. I fail often, but I try to remember. They said, pray for wisdom and for love every day. And that was the best thing I could have been told as a young minister's wife. Pray for wisdom and love. Now I'm sure that Bethan Lloyd-Jones and Dr. Lloyd-Jones did that, because it's full of wisdom, wit, humour, and I think so many people who I've spoken to, just a few people who've read the book, one of the biggest encouragements to them is the fact that Bethan Lloyd-Jones was a very anxious woman, very anxious. She dealt with it prayerfully and by God's grace overcame it. But that has helped so many when they've said, now I'm like that. And I think that she helps people who are anxious to realise where the help is and where you can get help for that anxiety. So I think the best recommendation I've had, I sent, before whenever the book was in the shops, I sent them to my children. And my daughter, if I can remember right, she said, I always thought that she'd been put on a pedestal and really too much had been made of her. But through the book, she said, I can see that she really was a godly woman. And she said, you'll see that I couldn't put the book down. This was 20 to 1 in the morning, and she's got a little 2-year-old. She said, I just rocked with laughter at some of the things that she got up to. So I recommend the book to you, not because I've written it, but because it's worth reading. Okay. I don't know whether